It can be incredibly difficult to experience living paycheck to paycheck, even when you think you're making enough money to get by easily. You may think it's just you, but you're definitely not alone. Fortunately, we're excited to share insight into a topic that's been integral to the success of one of the best investors in the world, Charlie Munger. He runs Berkshire Hathaway alongside the famous Warren Buffett and has a massive net worth of $2.3 billion. Not to mention, he's been around for a while. One of the most important things that he shares with his famous counterpart is that he's fantastic at managing money and constantly living below his means. That's why, in this video, we'll be revealing Munger's insight into this subject and give you a simple step-by-step plan that you can start implementing today to live below your means. Today's the day to take control of your finances and propel yourself into financial independence. So let's get started. Number 1, have a budget. It's been stated by Charlie several times in interviews and journals that knowing the cost of things and making sure you're not overspending on items is the key to financial health and success. But let's put this into a different perspective. Charlie Munger owns assets through Berkshire Hathaway to several different businesses in all sorts of categories, ranging from Fruit of the Loom clothing, Geico Insurance, and Kraft Heinz, known for their ketchup and mac and cheese. You may be wondering what this has to do with having a budget. Well, think of these companies like items that they own. When they see a company with value, they'll buy it and get major returns from it. When they don't see the value in a company, they don't buy it. When a company that used to give them value no longer does so, they sell it and keep what's left over. When you replace the word company with the word item, suddenly investing looks a lot like frugal living and money management. Another point to think about is that as a company owner himself, Munger needs to make sure he's tracking the expenses of the assets and cash flow of the company. Obviously, the goal is to spend the least and make the most, resulting in the best possible situation to pay himself. So how do you apply this to your life? It really depends on who you are as a person, but there are some common things that need to be done with a budget. Firstly, tracking your expenses and income is a must, so you can constantly keep up to date with your cash flow. In other words, as a manager, you need to communicate with your money so that it's doing the best job it can do. Secondly, you need to be realistic with how much you can spend on items and make any necessary changes to adapt. For example, if your rent or mortgage eats away 45% of your income, you're spending way too much and should find an alternative, like either getting a side hustle, finding a roommate, renting a room in your house, or downsizing. Lastly, make sure that whatever you're buying will actually give you value or a return on your investment. In other words, if you want to purchase an item, say an article of clothing, make sure that it's something you'll be wearing until you can't anymore. Bonus tip, there are tons of apps that you can use to help keep track of your budget and even help you figure out a budget that would work best for you. According to Forbes, Investopedia, and CNBC, the best free budgeting app is Mint. Number 2, avoid debt. Now that you've made a budget, the next step is to reduce your expenses. Anyone who has ever thought of a business, you'll know that debt is one of the worst expenses a business can have. It really can be the success or failure of a business. Munger knows this and has very clearly stated in several sources that debt is something to be avoided at all costs. It should be no surprise that most companies have some sort of debt that they need to pay, because most of the projects and endeavors businesses seek are much too big to start without significant funds. It's no different for Munger's business and the businesses he is looking for. When he finds a business that looks good but has high debt, it's always a major risk because they're not living below their means and prioritizing a repayment plan that can completely destroy them in difficult times like we're in right now. With that in mind, Munger always looks for companies that actively look to reduce their debt or already have no debt at all. And no debt means that all of the profits of the company can be kept to continuously grow. To apply this to your life, think of a company as a person. When a person manages their debts by always paying them off on time and getting rid of them first and foremost, then the financial success and growth of that person are inevitable. However, if a person keeps on piling up debt without paying it off effectively, it'll come crashing down on them, even if they look like they have everything. For those who are in debt, some effective debt repayment strategies are to either pay off your high-interest debt, usually a credit card, which is the mathematically quickest way to get rid of debt, or to pay off your smallest debt first, which gives you the psychological push by getting a quick gratification from completing a goal. Regardless of the case, you want to prioritize paying off your debts when you're gearing your budget towards lowering your expenses and living below your means. Number 3, have an emergency fund. Typically, an emergency fund is built alongside the time you spend paying down your debts. Essentially, it's the savings part of your budget, whereas the debt is the expenses part of your budget. It should be no surprise that Charlie Munger has strong thoughts on emergency funds, as he considers it one of the best ways to protect yourself against financial windfall. We are all subject to financial difficulties, but that's usually amplified when you're in business. So many unexpected things can happen that can easily cause a downturn in the economy and give no forewarning at all. The most recent of these is the pandemic and the massive inflation that followed. However, people like Munger and the businesses he invests in tend to get through these difficult times with little worry. When Munger looks for businesses, he always makes sure that they have a significant cash flow and cash reserve to withstand difficult times. For example, when interest rates soar, but staff still need to be paid as well as the products needing to be continually made and sold. During these times, having a good cash flow and actual cash helps prevent you from going further into debt and potentially bankruptcy. If we apply this concept to a person, having a good cash flow and reserve means saving up enough money to live for at least 3 to 6 months without any income in case the worst possible situations happen. Typically, when you start saving, you want to focus on saving for an emergency fund first. Number 4, continuously live below your means. It's not enough to just practice these steps once and expect everything to fall into place. The previous steps need to be consistently practiced every single day, regardless of your financial position. Munger is firm on this concept and speaks often about it to his business associates and students. In his case, it's about making sure that emotions don't get in the way and always know the businesses you're investing in. Once someone drops these rules and does something else, they run the risk of ruining the financial prosperity they've built. In other words, going from below their means to above. For example, imagine someone was on their way to becoming a successful investor and managed to gain an amazing 20% return on the market for 2 years in a row. However, they wanted to grow their portfolio more, which meant they abandoned the way they were investing. Unfortunately, they ended up losing 30% in the following year because of it. For most people, this example is getting lazy with budgeting, cutting back on debts, and saving. When you start taking these steps, you'll notice how much easier it is to live below your means. But once you stop, it'll become just as easy, if not easier, to go way beyond your means. There are tons of tips to live below your means, and if you want to educate yourself on them, then subscribe to Investors Weekly, where we have all the information you need on the best tips that you can start ASAP. Number 5, invest smartly. Investing doesn't have to be rocket science. In fact, it should be almost as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. At least, that's what Charlie Munger thinks. There are tons of ways to invest and even more strategies behind investing. However, sticking with what you know means you are way more certain of getting the results you want, and that alone will allow you to find financial freedom. For example, if you know nothing about the stock market, except that it can give you a bigger return than a high-interest savings account, you'll likely end up losing a lot more than gaining. Before I continue, let us know in the comments below if you'd like us to make more videos about investing. However, if you invest your money into a retirement savings account like a Roth IRA or a 401k, you know exactly what you'll be getting out of it. In fact, you know that the account will grow for sure. Out of the two options, without question, investing your money in reliable places like retirement, schooling for your children, emergency funds, and hobby funds will all ensure that your money will grow and your investments won't be wasted.